gonna keep the intro pretty short here. I really appreciate you joining me again today. Had a little bit of a hiatus. Dealing with some family matters here, but thanks so much for coming back to join me. I'm pretty excited to check out this watch. Some of the footage is actually from several weeks ago at this point because I had that interruption. But I'm really excited to finish off this video. I'm excited to take a look at this piece, which was a really big, kind of early grailish type watch for me. I was really excited to get into this brand. It was the first kind of taste of a luxurious kind of brand, you know? So I really treasure it. I hope you enjoy us watching. That's my cat jumping off the couch. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's go ahead and get started. Oh, almost forgot to mention, on wrist today I've got the Christopher Ward C60 Sapphire. It's like a little bit of an older one at this point. They've been coming out with lots of new interesting pieces lately. I'll throw up a picture here so you can see what I'm talking about. Pretty fun piece. I still like to slap it on the wrist from time to time for sure.
I used the term grailish a second ago for a couple of reasons. One, I kind of hate the term grail, to be really honest with y'all, in general. And two, even if we accept the usage, quote-unquote grail is so relative for different people, and for me at least, and probably most peeps, kind of volatile too. It's rare that one piece sits above the rest in my heart or mind forevs. So there you are. Suffice it to say, Grand Seiko was and still is a brand I do esteem pretty highly, and I'd hazard to say more highly than any other brand. So with all that fervor, after a few years of collecting, I resolved to get a Grand Seiko piece on a decidedly un-Grand Seiko budget, which required research, diligence, and a lot of hemming and hawing on my part, I have to tell you. I landed with purchasing this vintage reference from a Japanese seller. It didn't seem like all too common a piece to crop up, and perhaps not as desirable these days for some reasons that I'll elucidate. But it was mine, and if you have one takeaway from the vid, it's that this line or niche of Grand Seiko is slept on like a big old 90s era pillow. Let's get some deets out of the way to start. You've been peeping. You got it. You've been peeping the Grand Seiko reference SBG G003. First released in 1990, it features a high accuracy quartz or hack 8N 6.5 movement with an accuracy of plus or minus 10 seconds a year. If you're a GS lover already, that level of accuracy is probs familiar, being the same as most of the newer lauded 9F series of movements. This particular movement was used in several references around the time and preceded the 9F of the latter 90s till today. While we're getting technical, I'll bomb some specs on the screen for you. We got an 8.5mm thickness, 35.5mm case, that does exclude the crown, 40.8mm lug to lug, very compact, 18mm lug width, which I'm going to revisit, and a 40-gram weight, very svelte. It's light, thin, unobtrusive, qualities I generally value in most of my watches. It's one that doesn't assert itself on wrist by size. It does do so with its finishing, which I'll discuss a bit more in a minute. I think this size of watch is right in that Goldilocks spot for me for my 6¼ inch wrist. Maybe it'd work for you too. As you'd famously expect from Grand Seiko, you've got a mostly highly polished case with a kind of unique bezel that flares on opposite sides of the dial. The watch definitely catches the eye, and it's a tad blingy as a consequence. Applied baton indices and minute markers, also highly polished. Double branding, Seiko at noon, Grand Seiko at 6. And you got a printed Grand Seiko as well. There are gold or gold tone accents on the sign, crown, and case back. I say gold or gold tone just because I'm a little murky on that. I have heard that some of the newer references that have gold accents, that it's not actually gold, except on very particular references. So I'm going to go with gold toned. That case back that I mentioned is brushed. You've got a framed date window with a date wheel having a sort of silver tone to it. It's not a flat white. I'm not sure how well the silveriness is going to pick up on video. I'm partial to the pencil style handset for whatever reason, muy subjective, I have to admit, but I reckon the writing's on the wall with that preference, since my lone Omega that I kind of painstakingly picked out has a similar handset. I'll show it side by side just for kicks. My favorite bit, and what really had me smitten at the time, was the sunburst champagne dial. Depending on the lighting and the angle, the hue ranges from, pretty pale to a rich golden ginger ale-y kind of tone. I'm more of a ginger ale guy, to be real with y'all, than champagne, so ginger ale. The dial was the clincher for sure. So yeah, all the elements add up to what I believe to be a pretty attractive package. I do want to revisit the topic of the movement though, and the niche this piece and others like it occupy in the GS back catalog. And I'll go ahead and play devil's advocate a bit to explore possible negatives for this particular reference. I mentioned that the movement is plus or minus 10 seconds a year, which was and still is a feat. Go Seiko, go Grand Seiko, making baller quartz pieces for, unsurprisingly, since it's kind of their baby, for decades and decades. That aspect is comparable to the 9F series of movements in play today, like I mentioned. I'm going to show a side-by-side with this piece and my 9F example just for kicks. You might be wondering, what's the difference then? Digging around a bit, it seems a primary difference could be, and I use this really conditional language purposefully, could be the method for regulating the piece, which is supposedly quite easy for the 9F movements, for the right person, not easy for me, but a bit finicky for these older ones with a series of dip switches to manipulate. I'm not going to claim a lot of expertise on this front, to be honest with y'all, but I figured I'd share what I found. If you happen to know more, I'd be keen to gain knowledge, so go ahead and leave a comment down below. While we've got the two quartz examples, next to each other, figured I'd mention another difference that might be bothersome for some in favor of the SBG G003, which is the more standard lug width of 18 millimeters, whereas the newer models often, or almost exclusively with GS, are 19 millimeters. So straps for the little ginger ale are a bit easier to come by if that's something that concerns you. The strap featured in this video I bought from an eBay seller that I really like a lot. I've gotten several straps from and had really good customer service. This is not a sponsored video at all, obviously, but if you're curious, I'll put the link for his eBay shop down below. I don't believe I ever had a fully original strap for this example. I'm pretty sure it came, which is a pretty generic black leather strap. If I had to levy some criticism, which I don't wholeheartedly believe in, it might be that this reference has a somewhat mixed aesthetic. On the one hand, you've got the refined, dressy, blingy elements we discussed, but then there are more toolish aspects as well, like the handset, the here and there brushed bits, the utilitarian date window. Side note, I'm becoming more and more of a date hater these days, but I'm less bothered when the piece is quartz, just because you don't have to reset it so much, that kind of thing. One could chafe and say it's not a great daily because of the former, the dressy elements, and maybe not a great dress piece because of the latter, the toolish parts. But I say, whatevs. It's totally boss for whatever you want to do with it, as far as I'm concerned. I think it would actually make a great daily, even though I don't wear it daily. Maybe you got your own opinion though. Color me curious. Would love to hear your thoughts. Have I piqued your interest in this kind of wonky foot-finding period of Grand Seiko? As always, thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. Hope you're having a rad day wherever you are. Take care.